Thank you, Eric. It is now my great delight to introduce our final speaker of the summit, Mr. Randy Glein, Managing Director for venture capital firm Draper Fisher Jurvetson, also known as DFJ. Randy joined DFJ in 2002, and he is a Managing Director of DFJ Growth, where he focuses on leading investments in innovative, high-growth technology companies. His career spans more than 25 years in the technology industry as a venture capital investor, operating executive, and entrepreneur. Randy was named to the Forbes Midas list in 2013 for his role as an investor in companies such as Box, Performix, SpaceX, Tesla Motors, TicketsNow, Tremor Video, Tumblr, Twitter, and Yammer. Previously, Randy was CFO of FeedBurner, a DFJ portfolio company acquired by Google, and a member of the founding team at DirecTV. He also served in senior roles at Tribune Ventures and Hughes New Ventures. Randy began his career as an engineer with Hughes Space and Communications and Martin Marietta. He holds an MBA from UCLA Anderson, an MSEE from the University of Southern California, and a BSEE with high honors from the University of Florida. That's right, Randy is a Gator. A lot of people talk about thinking big with the goal of making a positive impact in the world, but Randy does more than talk about it. He does it every day. And we're very fortunate that he is here today to talk to us about how he does it. Please welcome Mr. Randy Glein.
Thanks, Cammie. Thanks to Eric and Meg, everybody else who helped put this summit together. Really glad to be here, really excited to be here. It's always great to come home. It's always great to come to Gainesville. And it's always great to talk about my passion for technology and innovation. Today I want to talk about technology, where we've been, where we're going, how we're going to get there, and why I'm confident that we're going to continue moving forward consistently over long periods of time. So first I want to delve into the forces at work just to set the stage for some of my conversation. Then things will speed up in the back half. I'm going to roll through a bunch of examples. But I want to talk about innovation, namely new technology developments that enable progress, all of this change we talk about all the time. I want to talk about disruption, which is really a state of disorder. Sometimes it's a state of chaos, and it's really the agent of change in markets and industries that are driven by the impact of all these new innovations. I also want to talk about the natural forces at work to facilitate all of this change, which turns out that these forces are recurring, they're exponential in nature, and they're accelerating, namely accelerating change. And just as a little bit of a thought exercise to get us going, I would challenge everyone in this room to think about the most innovative company today and the most innovative company in your mind. What company will be the most innovative 15 or 20 years from now? And then I would bet everything on the fact that no one in this room is right. And the reason for that is that company that will be the most innovative company in 15 or 20 years doesn't exist yet. And that has been repeated over and over and over again in technology-driven industries. Think about companies like General Electric, IBM, then Microsoft, then Google, then maybe Facebook, in terms of the way they connected people around the world. Maybe a company like a Tesla Motors, very innovative. So I'm also going to provide some examples as we go through the presentation. Then I want to talk at the end, and I'm going to borrow some of what I do from some relatively famous authors, at least in the world that we all live in. Folks like Clayton Christensen, The Innovator's Dilemma, Gordon Moore, Moore's Law, Ray Kurzweil, who extends Moore's Law in many ways in terms of his work, and someone we're pretty close to, Craig Venter, someone who's largely credited with sequencing the human genome. Incredibly innovative scientist. And I also want to talk about the creative spirits, the folks who make all of this happen. Just like the last group of panelists we had, obviously very passionate folks that are really taking the risks, thinking big, and making it happen. When we talk about some of these changes, the Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton Christensen, for those folks that haven't read it, I'd encourage you to do that. There are lots of great books and texts out there about innovation and disruption, the combination of the two things, disruptive innovation, which is really what a lot of Clayton's work focuses on. I want to share with you as we get going what shapes my perspective. Obviously, what shapes my perspective is my education. I give the University of Florida a lot of credit for getting me started on that path. In my career since UF, I've been a grad student. I've been an engineer, a practicing engineer. I've been a business operator. I've been an entrepreneur, and I've been a venture capital investor. And that's what I do today. That's what I plan to do for quite some time. It's a great profession for folks who are who are a little bit bipolar in nature, who want to participate in all this great innovation at the same time. It's very hard to do that for an entrepreneur. I've been in that seat before, and you have to be extremely focused to be successful, independent of where you are operating your business. So, also my perspective is somewhat embodied in this logo. So this is the logo of my venture capital firm, DFJ. And I'm curious if anybody can hazard a guess, what does this mean? This logo. So part of it's pretty easy, right? It's the globe. We're global in nature. We pursue and chase innovation everywhere. And increasingly, as we just heard, entrepreneurs are everywhere. Information is ubiquitous. That's been the result of this great thing we call the internet, mobility, and broadband, and all these things, which will be part of my talk in a bit. The triangle, for anybody who's in the fraternities and sororities or in engineering, probably knows what this means. That's the Greek letter delta. That means change. So our entire firm is focused on, this is our mantra, change the world. And we aspire to work with entrepreneurs anywhere and everywhere where they are, to provide them with capital, to provide them with mentoring and advice, and to provide them with connections and relationships to help them pursue their dreams, to help them go big, to help them ultimately bring new technologies to the market and create sustainable, long-term sustainable enterprises, commercial enterprises. So how do we do that? We look for disruptive leaders. It takes some vision, but I would say most of that vision is in the entrepreneurs and their ability to convince us that they have the vision. We look for things that, so this picture here is it's a black swan. Pulling that from another author, who, black swans are these really rare events that are unpredictable without the benefit of hindsight. And most of the technologies that we're going to talk about today, in the past and going forward, are the result of these great innovations, this great change in technology, rapid pace, but things that disruptive means market focus. So innovation is really about technology. Disruption and disruptive innovation is really about changing markets, transforming existing markets in some way, making the incumbents look kind of old, tired, and stale, or helping to create brand new markets. So these are the things that we look for, and we look for hyper-growth opportunities, companies that are doubling or tripling every year for extended periods of time. Those are hard companies to build. They take a massive amount of effort, they take a lot of experience, they take a lot of people around the table, but they take, first and foremost, tremendous vision. And that's what the entrepreneurs provide, and we pride ourselves on trying to find the most extraordinary entrepreneurs in the world to partner with. So we found some of them. We haven't found all of them, and we're wrong as much as we are right, probably more. But in fields where these are all companies listed here that we've invested in the last several years, and I bring them up because they are good examples of what we think about when we think about companies that are really changing the world. Up in energy, Solar City, a company that went public in December. So just for those who don't know the venture capital business, we invest in startups, in young private companies. The goal is always to grow those companies up and ultimately for our investors deliver returns to them by either selling those companies to strategic acquirers or to take those companies public and have them trade on the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange or somewhere around the world. Solar City is an example that is really changing the energy landscape. That company provides solar panels, not a really new idea, they do it in a very innovative way, to businesses and consumers all over the country. What's unique about that? Well, number one is they are allowing all of us to go energy independent, to get off the grid, and to do that without changing the price we pay for electricity. So they do that through a combination of technologies, through a unique distribution network, and through information technology for monitoring and assessing these panels on a regular basis, and they finance them. So the technology here was not so innovative. What was really innovative is they didn't invest in some of the technologies that we've seen in solar that just don't work. So I think one of the lessons there is when you look at the value chain of industries, it's really easy to be wrong. A lot of our brethren out in Silicon Valley invested very heavily in unique organic compounds and technologies that they thought would bring new efficiencies to this market. But what was disruptive was Solar City and others started to invest in overseas sourcing and of the technology, and it came at a great cost to companies in the U.S. because the price of solar literally has gone down in the last 5 years. This is very disruptive. From $4 a watt when we invested in this company, they now are able to acquire solar panels for under $1 a watt, 80 to 90 cents a watt. So the entire cost structure of that industry has been changed almost overnight, just in a few short years, making solar affordable, making it financeable, and allowing us to all take advantage of natural, renewable, green energy without spending additional capital. Media has been disrupted. Twitter and Tumblr are two examples we have. There are others. I would put Facebook in that category too, in terms of media. But companies like Twitter and Tumblr have changed the game in broadcasting, in print media. You probably hear about the death of the newspaper industry. I spent some time in that business, and I can tell you it's a tough place to be these days if you haven't made the transition to digital and interactive, if you haven't made the transition to social media, the way we all now share information. Twitter and Tumblr have allowed every one of us to become publishers. We can create content, we can distribute that content. Enterprise IT, companies like Yammer and Box, they've changed the way we get access to our content, our data, our files, all in the cloud, all over broadband. The way we share and collaborate within enterprises is totally different now than it was several years ago. Probably the most disruptive companies on this chart in the last 3 or 4 years, SpaceX and Tesla Motors. Tesla Motors essentially took an electric motor that was invented by Nikola Tesla in the 1880s or 1890s and brought that to market 120 years later. So what's unique about that? What's unique about it is they were able to bring commodity battery technology to the market in a way nobody else has done before, to bring it together in a power management system that allows them to get the longest range and the highest performance of any electric vehicle on the planet, bar none. And they've done it. That vehicle there, that's the Model S. That car gets 250 to 300 miles per charge. It does that with a very unique powertrain and battery management system. So they get incredibly long range. They do it reliably, and that company is a company that, when we invested, I think a lot of people thought we were absolutely crazy. The markets were melting down. The auto companies were going bankrupt. Government was bailing them out. And we chose to put our investors' very valuable capital into a company like Tesla Motors. That company has grown from about a $100 or $200 million valuation just a few years ago to over $20 billion market cap today, delivering their second line of vehicles, the third line of vehicles coming out soon, and yet no other company in the world, General Motors, Ford, Toyota, you name it, has brought a pure electric vehicle to the market that I would say is anything other than really a glorified golf cart. SpaceX, also very innovative. Some folks in Florida may know this company. We launch fairly routinely these days out of the Cape. And that company is an example of taking a clean sheet of paper from an engineering approach, taking a clean sheet of paper to the design of an industry that hadn't seen innovation in 30 or 40 years. We're still launching technology into space that was basically designed in the 60s. And on top of that, as a country, as a nation, we currently don't have the ability to take things to space, to take humans to space, to bring them back. In fact, SpaceX is now the only company here in the U.S. that can take supplies up and bring them back. And so, how did they? And they do that for a price that even the folks in the China market, where who've had a significant cost advantage for at least 2 decades in the launch vehicle market, the Chinese believe a company like SpaceX has to be subsidized by our government because they can't compete on price. So clean sheet of paper, new design, taking advantage of new technologies, and kind of a little bit back to the future, and vertically integrating how they design and build these rockets and spacecraft. So now I'd like to show a quick video just to kind of get everybody a little bit more awake, and then we'll move on to some of the things around innovation and accelerating change.
Very impressive crowd here. This is a great car. You're a bunch of great workers.
We need to capture this historic moment. Tesla!
So I know that video is a little gratuitous. I apologize for that. We show that video to some of our investors, and I didn't have a chance to take out some of the more gratuitous things in there. But I did want to show that to kind of demonstrate the important things that some of these companies are doing, the ways that they are changing the world. And I'm very passionate about all of our companies, and I'm happy to talk about them afterwards if anybody has any questions. I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit here and roll through some ideas about technologies we've seen change the world over the last few years, and kind of the forces at work that we think are going to cause things to change very rapidly going forward, that makes it hard to predict what will be the most innovative company 10 or 15 or 20 years from now. So, you hear this all the time, especially when you go through macroeconomic fluctuations, economic challenges like we went through in 2008 and 2009. Innovation is dead. I say long live innovation. It's just getting started. So where are the flying cars? I'm just waiting for Tesla to put the wings out on the bottom of their new vehicle. Moore's law is dead. I think we can prove that that's not the case at all. In fact, it's accelerating. The smartphone completes me. What did we do? 5 or 6 years ago, we didn't have these. We didn't have them. We might have had a BlackBerry. We didn't have a smartphone. We didn't have real-time broadband connectivity in our pocket, and now we can't live without it. That's real innovation, that we think about what it was like before we had these things. The internet is declining. Everything's already been invented. What else is left? So I would say rumors of the death of innovation are greatly exaggerated. And why is that? We believe we are entering, we meaning the folks I work with, and probably most of the folks in this room, given your backgrounds, not only is innovation not dead, but we are entering the most disruptive decade yet. Sorry, I'm going to go back for 1 second. The other thing is when you look at so Ray Kurzweil, law of accelerating returns, I'm going to show his graph that I just gave a peek at. 20,000 years of progress. When you think about the exponential power curves that we deal with in innovation, 20,000 years of progress we're going to realize in the next century. So hang on. This is Ray's chart here, and what's interesting about this is I often show Gordon Moore's chart before this. I'm going to show something like that next. But if you can't see, you probably can't read the chart. It's an eye chart, I realize. But the chart starts at 1900, goes up to current time in the gray box, and then out into the future another 30 years past that. The axis on the left-hand side is a logarithmic. This is a logarithmic curve. So what this shows is that over the last 120 years, not only has technology not slowed down, it's accelerated. So it's a power curve, right? We've gone from vacuum tubes and relays to the transistor, Gordon Moore's work, integrated circuits, and then all these new devices we have today. And we think this trend will just continue. Another version of this chart here shows these stages on the log axis, and it shows it in the context of Moore's law. You hear all the time, Moore's law is dead. Can't get any more transistors onto the wafer, and yet they find ways to do it and continue to build that technology. In a bit, I'm going to talk about what's beyond Moore's law and the transistor as we know it. But this also shows that accelerating change. Global network effects. So you look at companies like this, they're just internet companies, software companies. I would argue that they are also the byproduct of Moore's law, and they are further enhancing the accelerating change in the environment we all live in. This shows on the bottom the months from launch to these companies. You could put Facebook and Twitter on here as well, but we invested in Hotmail back in the late 90s, and it took them 18 months to get to 10 million users. Tango, if anybody knows that company, it's a video chat application. Got to 10 million users in less than 9 months. And you see these kind of trends. What happens is these global network effects, they allow all of us to, we're all connected now. We have all this great social media, things we've talked about, Facebook, Twitter, Tango, Skype. All of these things that allow us to connect with each other around the world. That allows us to share ideas, to communicate, to stay in touch. Sharing ideas is really important for innovation. I think I heard this earlier today. I know it's part of the conference here. This is a lot of the innovation we see is the result of interdisciplinary work, collaboration and cooperation across disciplines. Some of the companies we talk about in a bit will demonstrate that even further. So all of this stuff is disrupting, I would argue, every industry. The computer, which used to sit right on our desktop in a box, is now jumping out into these little devices and into the tablets that we carry, and it's invading every nook and cranny of our lives. It's everywhere. It's largely driven by IT. We are primarily IT investors, but I'll talk a little bit about how these changes, interdisciplinary renaissance, and effectively Moore's Law or Kurzweil's Law of accelerating change and returns are affecting all of these industries: space, manufacturing, agriculture, synthetic biology. And there's more disruption coming. These are some of the enablers just that we think about today. So broadband persistent connectivity. Didn't have that 10 years ago. All of these devices that I talked about that we carry, things like, again, I'll show the Tesla Model S, but the vehicles that we drive now, they're connected. They have operating systems that get updated on the fly. It's really amazing. You can almost drive a new car every month or every quarter as you get new software downloaded to it. The cloud, I call that back to the future, because I remember when I was here and dropping my computer cards on the floor in a Fortran class, trying to rewrite Newton's method and failing just because I dropped it on the floor. Really hard to recover from that back then. Don't have those problems anymore. But the cloud, I call it back to the future because we're connected. We've been connected for a while, but now we're connected at much different speeds and in much different ways through different kinds of devices. And companies now can put all of their data and information out in the cloud, in a data center that they don't have to own, that somebody else owns. They don't have to own the hardware or the boxes. I mean, just 5 years ago, I was building a company with some friends called FeedBurner that we ended up selling to Google. And that company, we still had our own data center. We bought dozens of servers every quarter. It was expensive. You don't have to do that anymore. You can sign up on Amazon Web Services and start your business and leverage all of their infrastructure for a relatively low, affordable cost. These are big changes that have happened in the last few years. So maybe a little bit of perspective. In the 1970s, we had this 8-bit Intel 8080. It had 8K of RAM. But it started the PC revolution. Today, we carry these devices around. New iPhones launched this weekend. Everybody go get one, right? They're in gold now, and lots of colors. 64 gig of storage or more. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I have terabyte of storage at home, a few terabytes of storage at home, just for media. We have GPS. So good and bad, but when you think about privacy concerns, you always have to incorporate that. But are we better off for having location, high-speed processing? Over 1 billion people carry these, what are really supercomputers in their pockets today. That 8080 computer was $400 unassembled, do it yourself, back in the 70s. If we could have built the iPhone then, we went back and did some work and with applied materials, would have cost us $4 billion to build an iPhone. Now we have all this connectivity, computers are jumping out of everything. This is disruptive innovation. So what's next? I'm going to flip through a few slides here. Again, happy to talk later if anybody wants to learn more. But some of these topics: new generation internet, space, electric vehicles, distributed manufacturing. Also a little bit of a back to the future trend. Robotics and artificial intelligence, and synthetic or artificial biology. So big data, everybody hears about that. This is that concept. Everything's in the cloud now. Petabytes of data. What do you do with it? How do you track it? How do you manage it? How do you take advantage of it? Web signals are everywhere now. Broadband, persistent connectivity, both enterprise and consumer-oriented applications. I mean, all these things we have on these devices now, this app-oriented world. You look down at your phone, you have, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 updates to your software every day. Download it in seconds. So connectivity is everywhere. Internet of Things. This is the idea that the computer has jumped out. It's leaped out of your desktop. It's everywhere. And it's affecting your home. Things like the Nest thermostat knows when you walk in the room as opposed to when your wife or your kids walk in the room, your husband, and turns the temperature in the room that you're in the way you want it, the way you like it, without you having to do anything. 3.0 next gen. So the internet's becoming more personalized, more adaptive. Yep, privacy, got to think about that. But it's amazing. It knows what we want when we want it. New space, something I'm really passionate about, so I'll try to keep my comments brief. But so this is the company we showed in the video, talked a little bit about SpaceX, really doing amazing things, literally at 10 or 20% of the cost of their competitors, with new technology, more reliable. The next frontier. So this little apparatus here, you can go on YouTube and take a look at this. SpaceX has developed this technology for reusing rockets. Another step function in innovation. These are disruptions. So right now, all these launch vehicles and all these spacecraft that we send up, other than things like the shuttle, which doesn't fly anymore, the Dragon capsule that SpaceX has, the Soyuz capsule the Russians have, can bring astronauts and people back to Earth. But for the most part, these vehicles go up, they burn up on re-entry, never to be used again. Tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars gone every time. We're building reusable rockets with this Grasshopper apparatus now. You can see they've been testing it down in Texas. So what's next? So Elon Musk, incredible entrepreneur, certainly one for the ages and certainly one of the best for this generation. Created Tesla Motors, created SpaceX. His vision, we're going to colonize Mars. Don't hit the doors too fast. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. Not so fast. I wouldn't bet against Elon ever, but in this case, the idea of going to Mars, that's really the important thing for us now in the moment, in this generation. Going to Mars is an incredible vision, but what that allowed Elon to do was to rally a team of people, world-class engineers, around an idea that we're going to do something that is new. It's adventurous, space exploration, really, really challenging. But what do they have to do to get there? You got to build a rocket. You got to get in space. You got to get to higher and higher altitudes. So first, we take it up into low Earth orbit and we launch some satellites. Other people have done that. Now we've done it too, but we've done it a lot cheaper. Next thing we got to do, we got to go into orbit. Let's get up to the space station. Next thing we do is we got to get people up there. So NASA just awarded around a $400 or $500 million contract to human rate the Dragon capsule that I showed on the last page. So these are incremental. They're very disruptive to existing industries. They're transformative industries we have today, but because they're focused on a vision like this, they can do things that may seem impossible in the future. My bet is they're not, but but it causes real disruptions in existing markets. That's the point. Microsats, same thing. So this is one of my partners, Steve Jurvetson, holding a satellite. It's a company called Planet Labs, and they build these little microsats. The average satellite that you launch into space today, hundreds of millions of dollars. Hundreds of millions. This, tens of thousands of dollars. Provides the same or better resolution imaging of the Earth. So think Google Maps and Apple Maps and Waze and all that stuff. All these mapping services, Navtech. These guys can go get all that data with a few dozen of these spacecraft in low Earth orbit, and they can do it for a small fraction of the cost of what we pay to put spacecraft up there today. That's very innovative. These are two NASA scientists that we pulled out of NASA and are building that company. Tesla Motors I've talked about quite a bit. The trend here on electric vehicles, though, right now seems pretty undeniable. Why do I think that? You know, Tesla's still small by relative standards in terms of the volumes that they produce. But they get long range. They get really high performance. That car, 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. 250 to 300 miles per charge. 20% of the cost of gas engines in terms of the miles, miles per dollar. They're doing the same thing in China. They're doing it different. They're doing it with two-wheelers primarily. China has over 200 million electric vehicles today. It's been a big surprise. EVs are outselling gas cars and motorcycles there today. Again, a little bit back to the future. Electric's been around a long time, but we just didn't know how to harness it. We have the battery technology, the power management technology. So what's coming next? If you come out to Silicon Valley, for those of you who are from there or make a visit, swing by Google sometime. You'll see, probably not sitting right next to a Tesla, but you'll see some of these Google cars driving around. They're self-driving. Amazing stuff. So think about that. Traffic flows, in busy cities, all now essentially computer controlled. Obviously, you're still there to protect yourself and take over if needed, but you don't have to very often in these cars right now, and they're not fully baked yet. But that's coming. So improved traffic flows, improved efficiencies, improved safety. Distributed manufacturing, so 3D printing. Again, think about where we were before the Industrial Revolution. We were small businesses. Then we had the Industrial Revolution. We have mass production. Henry Ford brings us into that age. And now we want things that are more personalized, more customized, more built for us. Companies want things that are unique to them. So what do? We invent things like 3D printing, again, with all of the innovations that are coming out of Moore's Law. Manufacturing, this laser technology company, femtosecond lasers. These lasers produce very high power pulses of energy in very short bursts of time, femtosecond intervals. And the result of that is they can ablate or cut any material with nano precision. And they can do it athermally. So existing lasers today, they cut things by burning them. So it doesn't work in every application. And most laser applications require post-processing. This, nano precision, no heat, no post-processing. Being used in glass, in automotive applications, and in certain medical applications. I'm really excited about the future of real medical applications around that type of technology. Robotics, one-armed robots, two-armed robots. You walk into the Tesla factory today, it's all robots. Rolling out literally a sheet of steel and aluminum, different composites, and stamping them out and putting them together largely with robots. This is a company our venture fund has invested in, a two-armed robot. Baxter. Artificial biology. So I mentioned Craig Venter earlier. Really revolutionary breakthroughs. He's credited with sequencing the human genome. But now that we've done that, what's next? So we sequence the human genome. We have the blueprint of life in some ways. Got to be careful how we use that, for sure. But we can do things now like personalized medicine, vaccines. IT has driven these advancements. So I'm not a bioscientist, but we see how these innovations around information technology, semiconductors, has dramatically expanded the processing capability to allow us to do things like this. That's a picture of Craig. You know, the way we've now mapped genes and proteins, and look at the slope of that curve. That's annual segments there. Really amazing. It's all done with computing power. At the same time, we have gene sequencing, so that's reading the genes in the blueprint of life. We have the write. So now how do we create genes? How do we fix genes, proteins, DNA? And the cost of that. So we can now sequence a gene for $100. When Craig started, millions of dollars 10 years ago. Same thing with writing or printing. 3D printers, think about the ink, are now proteins. Now for something completely new. I did this for Cami. Quantum computing. So I mentioned earlier, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's next beyond traditional transistors and Moore's law. This might be it. It seems to be working now. It's been a process, 10 or 12 years or more. But this is D-Wave. They're building a quantum computer. Love to see one here. Call this Rose's Law, after the founder of the company. This just shows, again, this exponential, you know, the number of qubits and what might happen over the next few years. Performance competitive with classic computers using quantum computing. Faster than all computers in the world. And possibly in the next several years, faster than all computers we think we could ever make. It's hard to get my mind around that for sure. So who does all this stuff? These are the faces of disruptive innovation. These are the entrepreneurs that we back. These are folks just like you out in this room. Folks that aspire to be entrepreneurs in Gainesville, in Silicon Valley, in Asia, wherever it is. Elon Musk, Tesla and SpaceX, Aaron Levy, Box, Dick Costolo, Jack Dorsey at Twitter, J.B. Strobel at Tesla, David Karp, the young guy in the middle on the right, dropped out of high school, started a company that became Tumblr, just bought by Yahoo for $1.1 billion. David Sachs, one of the early founders at PayPal, up in the upper right, started a company called Yammer to help revolutionize the way we communicate in business, the way we collaborate, the way we share information. Started Yammer, it was his second company, sold it to Microsoft last year for $1.2 billion. It's now a core of what Microsoft is doing and how they go to market with their new products to bring all of this stuff together, to stitch it together. What's common about most of these folks that we back, that we find starting these companies? They're young. Revolutionaries, kind of modern day revolutionaries. Michael Dell, 19 when he started the company. Sergey and Larry at Google, 25 years old. They were grad students at Stanford. David Karp, I just mentioned. Aaron Levy, Dylan Smith, guys that we work really closely with at Box. They dropped out of college in their second or third year. They were 19 years old when they started the company, when they were in college, and they dropped out to pursue their dreams. Really young. Young and angry, usually. What are they angry about? Something's not right in their world. It may not be political or economic anger, but it's anger that something's not right, that they think they can do something better. They can change the world. Back to our mantra and our logo. They're not afraid of failure. That's a big one. Not jaded by conventional wisdom. When you get older, it's hard to think so far ahead. It's hard to be visionary. You get stuck in your ways. You get stuck in your ways of thinking. Got to go back and remind myself all the time. Moore's Law is alive and well. There's lots more coming. They're passionate. They're makers. They're often deeply technical. Almost all those guys on that page there are really technical. They may not be engineers all the time. They're very product-centric in the way they go about things. They're visionary. They can lead. They don't have to lead forever. A lot of entrepreneurs don't end up taking their company public. They might cede control to a more mature, experienced professional manager. But the most successful companies, those founders stay involved either as a CEO or as a major force in the business for long periods of time. They're committed. They're our heroes. Those are the guys that we bet on. So that's nice if you're from Silicon Valley. Like I said, it's always great to be home, and it's always great to be in Gainesville. So I heard the question in the last panel, why doesn't it happen here? I think it can. You know, the internet, broadband, and mobility, they're big trends. They're here today. They connect us all. They've brought information availability to everybody around the globe. Information is ubiquitous. Entrepreneurs are everywhere. I think they've always been everywhere, but we didn't always know it. Sitting in Silicon Valley, we kind of know what was going on in the rest of the world. Sitting here in Gainesville, hard to know. Why was it hard to know? Well, I talked about some companies earlier on that network effects curve. You know, we started with the post office. Before that, I guess we had the couriers. We had the post office, and then we had snail mail, right? We had overnight express after that. That seems slow now. It's a big deal 10 and 20 years ago. We had email. It was great for a while. Now we have social, right? Connects us everywhere all the time. Allows us to publish, allows us to get the stuff we want instantly. Information's everywhere. Entrepreneurs are everywhere. They can get noticed anywhere now. Technology is changing everywhere, every industry. So what else do we need? It's about the people I showed on the last couple of slides. It's talent. It's passion. It's the willingness to take a risk, to put yourself out there. It can be really hard to do. But we have a legacy of innovation here in Gainesville. I want to give a nod to, I didn't see him here, but Dr. Human was my high honors advisor here at UF. He had this great little trailer in the back of the School of Electrical Engineering behind Larson Hall called the Lightning Lab. It's world famous now. We got lots of stuff here, right? Everybody knows Gatorade, glaucoma drugs, regeneration technologies, artificial skin, really innovative stuff. We have great resources here. College of Engineering, Innovation Institute, Innovation Hub, thanks to Eric, his leadership. A lot of stuff in the biosciences here, BioFlorida, the med school. College of Business, always there to help and contribute. Good entrepreneurship program. Savvy folks who know how to get business started. Reach out into the world for resources. So it can happen here. It absolutely can. It has, it is, and it will continue to do so. So what's next? Just to sum it up, accelerating change. It's not going anywhere. It's unrelenting, unabated. Interdisciplinary renaissance takes collaboration. Information technology, Moore's Law, Kurzweil, all these guys, you look at Disruptive innovation is driven by all these developments, chips and so forth, broadband, connectivity, transforms markets, trillion-dollar markets. Sounds simple, takes a lot of work. We believe the next decade is going to be bigger and better than the last. The one after that will be the same. Because technology accelerates, it's a power curve, exponential. And you see a lot of convergence. We've seen convergence in media through IT and connectivity, internet, disrupting newspapers and television and so forth. We've seen television adopt some of those technologies. See the same thing in life sciences, right? IT converging with health sciences. So innovation is live and well. We'll see more black swans. We just won't know it till we get there. It's the nature of a black swan. But innovation is the perpetual driver of disruption. Creates a virtuous cycle for entrepreneurs. As entrepreneurs, you get involved with a company. As a young engineer or programmer, you learn how to build things, how to create, how to think, how to be innovative. Go start your own. Virtuous cycle. So the sky's never the limit. And I would just challenge everybody here, think big, go big, make it happen, change the world. Thank you.
Hi, over here. Chelsea Simmons, I'm faculty in mechanical and aerospace engineering. And one of the things that I noticed about your entrepreneurs, in addition to being young and innovative, they were all men.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I decided not to. Yeah.
And one of the things, and so I'm sure we could spend a whole nother conference worth of time talking about that, but one of the hypotheses I'd like you to weigh in on, from my experience starting my own company and what I've seen coming from Silicon Valley, is that starting your own company, pitching to people like yourself, getting money, making things happen, requires a lot of self-confidence. We can be rough and call that arrogance. We can be charitable and call that passion. But what would your advice? And I mentioned that in the context of gender because that self-confidence is typically cultivated societally much better in men than in women. What do you think are some of the things that men and women alike can keep in mind as the strong silent types for still getting attention from people like you, people in the venture capital world that typically respond to the flamboyant aggressive sorts? What's your advice for the strong silent type?
Yeah, I'd say you'd be surprised at some of the entrepreneurs we back. Elon Musk I'll use him as an example. He's not a tremendously outgoing guy. And I like to say that at our firm, we're all geeks, right? We all have technical backgrounds, and we didn't used to get up on stage and talk freely, right? So I think it just comes with practice, experience. I would say about the gender thing, I just want to touch on that because I was going to do that during the presentation. I chose not to, but it is something I think about every time I use that slide because we show the founders. We have very senior women in our companies. Some are running our companies. We have a CEO at Good Technology now, woman who came in from Citibank. I don't know if anybody saw it this morning. I think it was this morning that Marissa Mayer at Yahoo was named the top 40 under 40 in the country, and 40 executives under 40 years old. And that's the first time a woman has taken the top spot. Tremendous progress. Awesome. I would say for anyone, whether it's woman or man, I don't think it's a gender issue. I think we've had educational gap in some ways, right? Over the last several decades in terms of engineering and technical disciplines, fewer women than men. But I do think women are increasingly gaining the confidence and the experience set and the mentorship to go out and do this. If you look at Sheryl Sandberg at Facebook, so she's number 2 at Facebook, and working with Mark Zuckerberg, most people would say, she plays an instrumental role, if not the leading role, in running that business. And so there are positions of power, but the position of startup is different. And I think that just takes, I think it takes mentorship. I also think it takes connections. You should take advantage of anyone you know who knows someone who can help you, whether it's raise capital or get in a position to raise capital or think about your business plan, just tutelage. And I think, you have to ask, right? You have to put yourself out there. So I don't know if that's the advice you were looking for, but I think it's happening more and more in Silicon Valley. And I think, there's kind of, no stopping. It just takes time.
I think asking for help is great advice, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ian Kent in the Chemical Engineering Department. Obviously, you need more than just a good idea. You can say, I want to invent the teleporters to change the world. We can get to France in 2 seconds.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, it's a fantastic idea, but that doesn't exist yet. So I guess a lot of the entrepreneurs you back kind of have an idea on how to realize their dream. I'm just wondering how you kind of sift through and decide which ideas are worth backing, which ones are technically feasible and have a good chance of return for your investors.
Yeah, I think we don't do the hard work, right? I mean, folks like you do the hard work. We I'd say the thing we try to do is we try to have I'm going to call it a 10-year view on the future, on how we think the future. I mean, I think it's really hard to, as a question I asked earlier, right? Most innovative company 20 years from now, nobody knows because it probably hasn't been invented yet. Almost certainly hasn't been invented yet. So what we try to have a view over the next 5 to 10 years on how these technologies we do know exist and are coming, how they're going to affect markets, and what the kind of the commercial timing of that is. We don't always get it right, for sure, but we take kind of really commercial view on that. In terms of the technologies, and how they develop, we generally get involved in companies after they have an idea, generally after they have a product, or at least some semblance of a product. We actually run both venture funds, invest in raw startups, and growth funds, where we invest in more mature companies that are really at the scaling phase of their business. And I would say on the venture fund side, what we look for, really passionate, talented, world-class technical people, and then try to surround them with other folks, interdisciplinary talents, and mentoring to help them take the next steps. We do invest in things like, D-Wave, quantum computing. When Steve led that more than 10 years ago, this is a crazy idea. But we had enough background to believe it was possible. To do what SpaceX is doing, can they get to Mars? I don't know. I'm a believer, but most people probably think that company is out of their mind when they talk about that. But they're taking incremental steps to demonstrate viability and proof points along that path. Big vision, proof points. And I would say those are really important to us, is seeing that a technical team can hit those proof points and prove something we call validation. Validation for the product and the technology.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, John Dobson. I'm a professor and director of the Institute of Cell Engineering and Regenerative Medicine. I enjoyed your talk, and it seems to me that you're very adventurous in your investments. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you is sort of related to the one you just had, but from both an engineering perspective and a venture capital perspective, I'd be very curious to hear your opinion of the Hyperloop technology.
The Hyperloop. Let's see. Nobody tweets this, right? Like I said, a couple things. One is that idea was really, I believe, so I don't want to speak on behalf of Elon Musk at all, but I believe that idea came about because of a disaster we have in California right now around the idea of creating a high-speed train, which, by the way, many countries in the world have, and we don't really have here. If anybody's ever done it, you know, the drive or the flight to LA from San Francisco or vice versa, it's a hassle, and you should have a better way of doing that. And they have that in Asia, they have it in Europe, and we don't have it here. So I think the idea was to put an idea out there, number one, that would maybe control some of this wasted billions and billions of dollars that are getting spent right now on an idea that's not likely to work for a high-speed train out there, that got somehow approved by the voters out there, and I won't get into the political conversation around that, but I think the Hyperloop is, as I've studied it, not in great depth, but enough to have an opinion that it could work. It's classic big vision. Think really big. Do something that's disruptive, but do it with technologies when you piece them together that come from many disciplines that individually work and collectively should work. It'll take time. It'll take money. It'll take probably more money than we estimate today, but the point of putting that out there is to get people thinking about it. I think the idea is that's kind of right now an open source project. Hey, here's an idea, let's all contribute to it. So back to my point about collaboration, is just to get the world thinking about how do we do this smarter, getting our nation to think about how we do it smarter. To me, that's the point. Would I bet against it? No way.
So
can we do two? Two people?
Oh, sure, we'll do
yeah.
two. That's fine.
well, I'll go fast. So without a doubt, venture capital has been an engine to drive exponential change, drive technology future really everything that we see the future becoming a reality. And the question I'd have is, how do you see the engine of venture capital changing over the next 10, 15 years? We talk about innovation, disruption. Really, it's been kind of the same mechanism since it was first created, where you take an equity stake and for all sorts of different terms. How is that going to change over, in your opinion, the next 10 years?
I probably won't go into too much depth. I'm happy to talk offline. I think the venture industry is changing right before our eyes. Our firm is trying to change with it, to be honest. We were probably the first institutional venture capital firm to go global. We did that back in the late 90s when our investors, our limited partners, they loved the idea. They said, wow, this internet's happening here. Why you're doing so well here. Why are you going to go China and India and Brazil and Israel? These are all places that we've been since then with our funds. So that was one step in the evolution, was entrepreneurs everywhere. We got to go be near them. Venture capital is really hard to do from far away. It's a local business. It doesn't scale very well, right? We have 4 partners on our growth team and 6 partners on our venture team. And it's a firm that's almost 30 years old. It's really hard to do at scale when you're investing in young companies and young entrepreneurs and small teams, and you really want to be close. So that part of it is really hard. Scaling, especially early stage venture capital, is really hard. Scaling later stage venture capital is a little bit easier because these companies are more mature. Our industry's changing right now. What I mean by that is, so the traditional way, we raise money from investors, we put them in funds, those funds last for 10 years, we deploy the capital, and then we try to harvest that by generating liquidity in those companies as they mature. The traditional ways of venture capital, I think, it's 10 years. People lock their money up for 10 years. Companies now, by the way, one of our big theories, it's not a theory anymore, 5-6 years ago it was more of a theory, companies are going to stay private longer. So you start a company today, it used to be, not just in the bubble of the internet, but in the 70s and 80s, you could start a company, if it did reasonably well and grow it to $20 or $30 million in revenue, you could take that company public. There were a number of boutique investment banks that help you do that, and you could trade on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ or whatever. You can't do that anymore. The world changed 10 years ago, and we think it changed for the better and for the long term, but Companies stay private longer. So if you have a fund that invests over 10 years, but your investors want to get their money back after a few years, start getting their money back, companies stay private longer. How do you get your money back? Right? So you invest in a company today, and it takes 8 or 10 or 15 years for that to mature, to have enough scale to go public. That model doesn't work, right? And we hear that a lot. So we raised a growth fund. Comes into companies later in their development and can start to generate liquidity faster. So that was one of our responses to that. Another response is the seed stage investing. It seems like a lot of the institutional investors like our firm have gotten, because of that trend, companies stay private longer, we need capital to come in before us today. That didn't used to be the case. It is true that companies are getting cheaper to start now than they were 10 years ago because of all these trends, the cloud and all that. But it's, we need angel investors. We need active angel communities. We need companies to get started a little bit before we come in, so by the time we come in, our investors can be, can have the horizon that they're looking for. What's going to happen in the long term? I mean, one of the big changes we've seen in the last 5 years is the development of secondary markets, meaning instead of taking a company public to get liquidity, other investors will come in and buy out early investors. And I think you're going to see that to be an organic, evolving way for early investors to get out if they want to or need to, and other investors come in. And that is a marketplace that is just emerging and developing to create liquidity. What the future holds, I think a lot of people will tell you this whole 10-year model for funds probably changes over time. But it's institutionalized now, so it's just going to take a while.
Thank you.
So, sorry, I don't know if that answered your question.
Sounds like a great opportunity for innovation, so thank you.
Yes, innovate our business model for sure.
Last question.
The previous panel was about the entrepreneurial community here in Gainesville. So as a Gator grad who's now at a leading venture capital firm, what's your take on the local entrepreneurship scene here, and how can we improve it?
Yeah, good question. So I love coming back here. I don't get back here enough. When I do, I try to spend time with entrepreneurs in the area. I often come in, when I can come into town, I'll reach out to folks I know and say, what are the companies that I can meet with and get acquainted with and kind of see what's happening. I think, one of the things for me, being a double E from here, I've seen less innovation on the IT side here than I have on the life sciences side. I mean, Florida has developed a world-class reputation around the biosciences and innovation there, and I think less has come out of the IT side. And I don't really know why, to be honest, because it's generally faster and cheaper. I wouldn't say better. We bet on faster, better, cheaper in our business, but it's faster and cheaper to start IT companies these days. But one of the things is they really need to be unique. There's a lot of Me Too's out in the land of internet startups and app developers and all of that stuff, right? So I think it's early days here from the perspective of the Innovation Hub and the Engineering Innovation Institute. I have seen personally remarkable or dramatic progress over the last 2 or 3 years in terms of the mission of the College of Engineering in particular. That's what I'm closest to, in terms of fostering a more innovative, creative environment. In fact, the title of my presentation and of this summit, right, is to really fuel the fire for the creative spirits. I think it was, in the past, I don't think there was as much focus on enabling that, and I think there is today. So I think I'm really encouraged by what's happening here. I think we will see more and more startups. It's not just about technology licensing, although David Day and his team do a great job. It's about real innovation and fostering a climate. The other thing is it does take a team, it does take talent. And I think the more we can build on successes of the past and have people, one of the problems in the rest of the country that doesn't happen in Silicon Valley, which maybe this is another way to answer your question, is in Silicon Valley, people repeat. They come back, they come back. They can fail, they try it again. They can succeed, and they do it again. And in other parts of the country, it's not just Gainesville, it's not just Florida. I lived in Chicago for quite a long time. Most parts of the country do not have that innovative, creative spirit that just fosters renewed enthusiasm to go do it again and again. Someone makes their money, they go play golf. Right? And I think what we need is more of that. More people coming back and contributing to the ecosystem, if you will, and either tutoring, mentoring, or providing these avenues for more success. You got to do it again. One and done is not the culture that creates this, innovative entrepreneurial ecosystem. So.
Great answer. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, Randy, I think you can tell from the number of questions how exciting your presentation was. So thank you again for being with us, and we have a gift for you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh, one more. Great. Thank you.